from the Common English Bible, and it's from John chapter 13, verse 31 through 36, and 31 through 34 is the love commandment. When Judas was gone, Jesus said, "Now the human one has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify the human one in himself, and will glorify him immediately. Little children, I am with you for a little while longer. You will look for me, but just as I told the Jewish leaders, I'll also tell you now. Where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, love each other, just as I have loved you, so you also must love each other. And this is how everyone know that you are my disciples, when you love each other." And verse 36 is the announcement of Peter's denial. Simon Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus answered, "Where I am going, you can't follow me now, but you will follow later."
Love one another. Love one another. Love one another. Any questions? Because that's about all I need to say, but I'm going to say a little bit more. That's what Jesus said. It's a short passage, that commandment to love. It's a big message. And let me tell you a story that maybe helps us understand even better what Jesus is telling his disciples and us. After losing his job in 2010, an amateur photographer named Brandon Stanton moved to New York City and had this desire, this passion, to take as many pictures as he could, being a photographer, took as many pictures as he could of people in New York. He wanted to capture their essence, their spirit, how they lived. And then he wanted to display those pictures and maybe tell about the people whose pictures he was taking. That was his passion. So after a while, he realized he wanted to know two specific things from people. And one of the questions he would ask people is, what words of advice, give me a piece of advice that means a lot to you. And people would share that with him, and he would write that down. Another way that he would open the door to people's stories is he asked them, what is your greatest struggle? Those are two pretty good questions to ask people in order to get to know them better, I think, to open that door to hearing their story. And so alongside all of the portraits, the pictures that he took of New Yorkers, he would post a little bit about either what their greatest struggle was or what their one piece of advice would be. And eventually his pictures and the quotes and the stories were posted online on social media, and he's had over 20 million followers look at what he has produced. Look at his project, which he now says is more about the stories of people than the pictures of people. Well, he spoke to one woman and asked her, what is your greatest struggle? What has been a great struggle for you? And she said, when her husband was dying, and she asked him, Mo, how am I supposed to live without you? How am I supposed to go on? And he answered with a wonderful piece of advice. He said to his wife, take the love you have for me and spread it around. Take the love you have for me and spread it around. Isn't that beautiful? Take the love you have for me and spread it around. And that's what Jesus wanted the disciples to do, because he knew they were going to be heartbroken when he was no longer with them. That it was going to be hard. He had been their closest companion and friend for 3 years. And this passage, he was getting them ready. He was instructing them, soon I won't be here. This is what I want you to do, is to love one another as I have loved you. In other words, he was saying, take the love I've shown you and pour it out into the world. It's interesting that in that fourth gospel, the Gospel of John, well, if you go back in Matthew and Mark and Luke, Jesus has other commands or ethical teachings, like if someone hits you on one cheek, turn the other cheek. If someone is without a coat, give him yours. All kinds of different teachings. But in John, there is no other talk about turn the other cheek or walk a second mile with someone or give them the coat off your back. Jesus is focused on people, his disciples, and us sharing love in the world, love for one another. Take the love I've poured out for you and pour it out in the world. Pour it out to strangers as well as friends. Pour it out to people that you don't know as well as the people you know. Pour it out on the people who are the least likable, the least your favorites, the people that drive you crazy. Take the love I've shown you and extend it. And extend it even when you don't feel it. Sometimes what you have to do before you feel love for someone or a group of people is go ahead and act in love, even if you're not feeling it. And a lot of times then that feeling of love comes along. But even when you're not feeling it, do it. Offer it. When you do that, you're pointing the way to God and to God's love. And this is not easy because, I have some family members that are very hard for me to love. And I'd rather just be really judgmental and critical and talk about them behind their back to people who will listen. And that is not what God is telling me to do in this passage. So I've got to stop that. Gosh, God. That's hard. But that's what Jesus' command is. Henry Nouwen, who's one of my favorite theologians, wrote, if we wait for a feeling of love before loving, we may never learn to love well. Don't wait for the feeling. Do the loving. And then, even when people can't respond in love back, even when they do those things that drive you nuts or make you want to give up on them, in other words, love them anyway, then those feelings will catch up. We'll find ourselves being able to offer more love. St. Jerome, who's one of the Latin church fathers, not the Roman church fathers, but the Latin church fathers, wrote about how John, the writer of this gospel, in his old age would remind those around him to love one another. And St. Jerome said, why did John do that so much? Why would he say, love one another so much? And St. Jerome told the followers in his time because it's what Jesus commanded. And if that's all you do, that's enough. If that's all you do, that's enough. It's a short amount of words. Love as I have loved you. But it was enough to sustain the disciples after Jesus was no longer with them. They were able to go forward and do the ministry that he had called them to do. And it's enough for us. It's a radical thing, loving when you don't want to love or you don't feel it. But when you choose love, when you offer that love, you bear witness to God's all-encompassing, extravagant, and radical love for all the world. And then God gives us the grace to offer that love, which is the defining characteristic of us as Christians and in our Christian communities. So, take the love you have for Jesus and spread it around. Amen.